Welcome to Mr. Chalk's Revision Tips. In this video, we will look at active transport in plants and active transport in animals. So, active transport is the transport of molecules across a cell membrane using energy, and it's where things are being moved from a low concentration to a high concentration. In animals, glucose molecules have to be moved across the gut wall in the blood. So when glucose concentration in the intestine is lower than it is in the intestinal cells, the movement of glucose involves active transport. Active transport, like we just said, is a process that is required to move molecules against a concentration gradient. The process requires energy. So for plants to take up mineral ions, ions are moved into the root hair cells where they are at a higher concentration than they are in the soil. So therefore active transport needs to be used. In animals, things like glucose and amino acids from digestion will be transported into the blood by active transport. So this happens after a meal, after the concentration of those nutrients within the intestines has dropped below what the concentration is in the blood. So therefore active transport requiring energy will be needed to go and make sure that all of those nutrients are transported in. So the image below shows a epithelial cell from the small intestine. So if you had a question that's something like, so suggest how the highly folded surface helps it to absorb folded food, you need to be talking about its increase in surface area. If we're naming one molecule that's absorbed and cells are taken in by active transport, it needs to be something like glucose, amino acids or lipids. And if we're talking about why is it necessary to absorb the food molecules by active transport, always when we're talking about active transport, you need to talk about it moving against the concentration gradient. And finally, if we're talking about cells needing more mitochondria, right, whenever it comes up and it starts talking about more mitochondria, you need to be mentioning something about the mitochondria providing energy by respiration for active transport to take place. So active transport also takes place in plants. The most notable time this happens is when ions are being taken up into roots. So active transport moves minerals from a low concentration to a high concentration. So we compare this passive transport where minerals are moved from a high concentration to a lower concentration. So active transport requires energy, while passive transport does not. So plant roots obtain some of their mineral salts from the soil by active transport. Why do we need active transport? You need to be talking about the fact that we're moving mineral ions across the cell wall or cell membrane against the concentration gradient. So therefore, because it's not by simple diffusion, energy is required, and that's from something like respiration. So active transport as a process can be looked at in 6 stages. So the first thing that you need to talk about is that the concentration is higher inside of the cell than outside. So therefore molecules are taken in against a concentration gradient. So a carrier protein is used to energy is required to make the carrier protein work. This energy is coming from respiration. The molecules are released into the cell, and that increases the concentration of that certain molecule inside of the cell. So if we have a look at this question, so a diagram shows 4 ways in which molecules may move in and out of the cell. The dots show the concentration of the molecules. Which arrow A, B, C or D represents the active uptake of sugar molecules? It's going to be C, because you can see that the concentration outside of the cell is a lot lower than the concentration inside of the cell. Thanks for watching.